Never mind. So, the idea of sanctification. Let me slow this back down. I'm already out of breath up here. You kids are just too fast for me anymore. Hey, I'm glad to see you guys all in here this morning. I got a little bit I want to share with you first. Pastor Joe 2 weeks ago talked to us about sanctification. We talked about sanctification in our speech last week, and this week I want to talk to you about sanctification in your finances. How many? Here it goes. Here it goes. I am not staying in my spot. There's no way. You can't make me. Okay, so see if I can get the kids' attention this morning. So I walked in the door like this, and God says, "What you got there, Bruce?" "Oh, I made $10, God." "Stop that, please." He says, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How'd you make $10? "Oh, well, you help me." "Whose is it?" "It's yours." He says, "Great. I'll take one. You keep 9. Wow. Thanks, God. That was nice of you. Now, what do I do with this part? Well, you never know what's coming up. Might have a rainy day. Maybe you ought to put something away in case something happens. Well, how much should I do, God? Why don't you do 1/5 of what you started with? 1/5. 20%. Let's see. Oh, that would be $2 more. Well, we'll put that away. Great. I got $7 left. God, you gave me $7. What do I do with it? Well, you got any bills you got to pay? Yeah, I do. I have a few bills to pay. Well, why don't you pay your bills? Oh, okay. I'll pay my bills. Bills are paid. I got $3 left. God, what do I do with it? Do what you want with it. Really? I can do what I want with it? Yeah. Well, let's see. What could I do? Maybe I should do things that would bless you with it, huh, God? Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Why don't you do that? I'll bet there's probably other people that could use $1 or $2. Yeah, there probably is. Huh? You need $1?
Yes.
What are you going to do with that $1?
Pay someone.
Okay, whose dollar is that?
Mine.
No? Where did it? Say it again. Whose dollar is it? God's dollar. So He's given you $1. Now, what do you do with that $1?
Give it to Him.
You give it to Him, and then He says you get to keep 9/10 of it. So you get 90 cents of it, and 10 cents of it goes back to God. He keeps a dime, you keep 90 cents. That's a pretty good deal, isn't it? Out of that 90 cents, He says, might be a rainy day coming up. Why don't you put some of that away? So put 2 dimes away. Okay, so now you got 70 cents left. Out of that 70 cents, what do you do with it? You got any bills to pay?
No.
Great. Then you can use that 70 cents to bless other people and to help God's kingdom along the way, okay? You might even want to buy yourself a candy bar along the way. That'd be okay, all right? Anybody else need $1? Huh? Who else anybody else? You need $1? There you go. Whose dollar is that?
God's.
God's dollar. What are you going to do with it?
Give it to people that need it.
Really? Give him his 10 first, his dime first, right? And He says you keep 90. And then out of the 90, you need to do what? Put a couple of them away in case of a rainy day, right? And then help others. Give it to someone homeless. Maybe they're hungry, could use something to eat. Great, you got it. You need $1? Whose dollar is that?
God's.
And what are you going to do with it? Huh?
Give it to somebody that needs it.
Well, I just gave it to you because you said you needed it. Now remember, you take the first bit of it and you give it back to God, right? A dime. And then He says take 2 dimes and put them away in case a rainy day comes, you need some money later. And then you got 7 dimes left and you can use those to bless other people, right? You got any bills to pay? Oh, then you can use it all that way. You guys got that? That's simple, isn't it? First of all of it belongs to who?
God.
God. You give it to Him and He says, you know what? I don't need it all. I'll just keep 10 cents and give you the rest. That's called the tithe, 10%. And He gives you the 90%. And then He says, put a little bit of that away because you never know what's coming around the bend. And then the rest of it, pay your bills and spend to bless others. Pretty simple, right? Now listen to me. If you will remember this, and I don't mean just for today, but I mean all your life. And when you start getting jobs and babysitting and working at McDonald's and God starts blessing you with money, if you remember what I teach you this morning, you will never have trouble with money. Never. Promise. That's what God's Word says. Let's pray. Father, your Word teaches us very clearly how to do all things. And so we give you praise this day. In Jesus' name, amen. I got a real hot spot up here with these monitors or something. Is there something I can turn off that'll make it quit doing that? Come on, get up here. Help me out. That ain't it. Just turn it all off. I don't care. I got another illustration for you guys this morning while you keep playing with things and turning all that stuff off. What I just taught you guys is really kind of simple, but let me show you this way. Oh, I haven't had this belt on in a long time. Oops. I don't know why you guys think that's so funny. I don't even know how to get it loosened up anymore. All right, so anyway, any you guys ever seen one of these?
Yeah.
What is that?
Tool belt. Tool belt.
What do you use it for?
Tool.
For building things, right?
Yeah.
For building things. All right, so let's see. I don't know what half these things are. And you know what?
Down is a hammer.
This is a hammer?
Yes.
Anybody ever showed you how to use one?
I know.
You know how to use one?
Yeah.
Did you figure it out on your own or did they teach you?
My dad.
Your dad taught you? That's a good idea. How about,
I don't know how to do it.
what's that?
Oh. That's
Triangle, speed square. Who said speed square? It's a speed square. What do you do with that? Did you know that on your own or did somebody teach you? Somebody taught. Somebody taught. There's a bunch of tools in here. What's that? What do you do with that?
level things.
Make sure your speed square is level, I guess. All right. What other kind of tools I got? Oh, I got a nice drill here. Got screwdrivers. I got I got pliers. Ooh, this one looks dangerous. Ooh. Yeah, you could get hurt with that, couldn't you? You know, would it be a good idea, do you think? Oh, what's this one? Oh, that's so I can measure things out, huh? That looks kind of sharp, though. Let me ask you, you think it'd be a good idea to take this batch of tools here and put them over in the nursery and let the kids play with them?
No.
Well, why not? They look like fun.
They're sharp and stuff.
They're sharp and stuff. So I really need to, if I'm going to give them these tools, I need to teach them how to use them, right? Yeah. Would you all agree with that?
No.
You do? All right. Well, let me show you something here. These are tools too. Anybody know what this is?
Money.
Yeah, there's money all over the place. Sit down. You had your dollars. Sit down. I got money. I got a checkbook. I got credit cards. These are tools also. And here's the problem. Just as if I took all these tools over and put them in the nursery and let the kids play with them, somebody'd get hurt if they're not taught how to use them. If you're not, if you're not taught how to use these tools, you're going to get hurt too. Okay? You all know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah.
Look around our society today. Children have not been taught how to use these tools, and they're getting hurt. And it's showing in our society today. So, years ago, as I was working with youth, I was struggling with this whole concept, and personally struggling. You know what? Nobody had taught me how to use those tools either. And so I had a mess in my life. So like everything else in my life that was a mess, I gave it to God, and He showed me in His Word how to straighten it up. I'd like to share that with you this morning as we get sanctified in our finances. Let's pray. Father, we submit this morning to you, and we ask that your Holy Spirit would be the one that would teach in this message and help us to understand clearly how you would have us use our finances in a way that brings glory and honor to you and helps us live in this world successfully and without struggle and pain and without getting hurt. So have your way this morning, Holy Spirit. We pray in your name, amen. So, okay. Here's the thing. How many got their bulletin in there? You got that little page that's empty in there? Some of you that have been in our adult class have heard this before. On that page that your bulletin is on, if you would just write G, S, P, S down the side of that page, I'm going to give you some verses to fill in there, and you're going to learn sanctification of your finances this morning. There is nothing more practical in this world than money. In fact, there was nothing that Jesus talked about more in his earthly ministry than possessions and money. He talked about that more than anything else, more than heaven, more than hell, because he knew what a problem it would be in our lives if it wasn't dealt with correctly. He knew what a problem it would be for us. So here's what I learned. Just like everything that God gives us, the world takes it and turns it around, right? So you wrote on your paper GSPS, which by the way stands for give, pay, or give, save, pay, spend. Okay? You can write that next to it if you'd like. I learned it the other way around. I would get my paycheck and the first thing I'd do is cash it and spend some money. Stop and get things I didn't need on the way home and spend some money on the way home. Then the next thing I'd do is I'd go, oh, I better pay my bills. And I'd pay what bills I could. And then save, well, if I had anything left over after that, I'd try to put a little bit in savings, but not much. And give, the church just wants my money anyway, right? And so that's how most of the world was seeing it. That's how I saw it, and that's how I learned. And that's what I did for a number of years, until I got myself in such a financial pickle that I really needed help getting out. At that time, God had given me the grace to learn to trust him and use his word to help. So let me share with you how this works. First of all, we're to give. The one thing I want you to think about in giving is your attitude for giving. Now I'm going to teach you a bunch of stuff about giving this morning, and what I'm going to say is going to maybe sound like you're going to give so that you can get back out of God. If that's your attitude, you got it wrong from the start. Check that as we go. Okay? This is not about giving to get. Your attitude in giving should be that of a thankful son or daughter. Write this one down under give. Genesis 4, 3, and 5. It's a story of Cain and Abel. And it tells us that Cain brought some of his fruit to give to the Lord, and Abel brought of the first of his flocks. And the key difference there, and I'm not going to go through the scriptures with you, I'm going to give you the scriptures, you look them up. This is why you're writing these down. The key difference is Cain came with an attitude of, here you go, God, you want some? Here. Here it is. Abel came with the attitude of, you get the first. And it says right there, he brought of the first of his flocks. And so the difference is, Abel had a desire to serve God and give to God first before anything else. Cain was giving out of, I guess, a feeling of have to. And so it says in Hebrews that Abel's offering, his sacrifice, was received because of his faith. But Cain's was not received. And you know the rest of the story. Cain gets mad about it, blames God, kills his brother, murder's introduced into our world, and we go from there. Exodus 35, 5 through 36, 6. This should be the attitude of God's people. It's a story of Moses, and they're going to build the temple. And he tells the people what they need to bring in order to accomplish the building of God's house. And the people have to decide. He says, you bring based on what you've received, based on your own heart. So he gives a command in 5 through 9. And then the people respond willingly in verses 20 through 29. They have a willing heart to give. And when that happens, in chapter 36, verses 5 through 7, they get to a place where Moses has to say, stop bringing. We have more than enough to accomplish the job. Quit bringing so much in. See, a willing heart will give until it's accomplished. Will give until the need is no longer there. How many know there's plenty of need out there? Plenty of need. I was talking about this with my son this weekend. There is sufficient resources in our world to feed the 8 billion people that are on this planet, to give them water, to take care of everyone's needs. But we tend to hoard it and hold it and control it. And our hearts are selfish. And we don't give of it like we should to meet the need. But if our heart is willing because of God's goodness to us, then we're going to get to a place where it'll be enough. You won't have to bring some more. Deuteronomy 16 and 17 tells us that we're to give according to what we've been given. So this morning, what's this young guy's name again?
Caleb.
Caleb, thank you. Caleb, you received $1 today, didn't you, in church? So now when you go, you can give out of that $1 that you've received, right? So the Bible says that you should give according to what you've been given. Can Caleb give somebody $100 this morning? No. Would it be expected that he should? No. But what can he give? No. How much does he have to give? 70 cents. 70 cents. He has 70 cents that's at his discretion to give to those that he could help. And that's how it should be, according to what you've been given. Deuteronomy 17:1, this shows where God's at. This places God first. If God is first in your life, you've settled that issue and He's first in your life, this will be a no-brainer. It will just be what you do. And then there's a neat story in 1 Chronicles 21. You might want to look at that. It's a story of David who is to sacrifice to the Lord, so he's going to buy this threshing floor. And his servant says, if it's for the Lord, you can have it. So the servant had a willing heart to give. And David said, no, I don't want to take it from you. I want to buy it from you. I don't want to sacrifice to the Lord anything that doesn't cost me. So there's going to be a cost involved. And there should be. It should cost you something in sacrificing and giving to the Lord. There should be a cost involved. So I'm giving you these verses for you to look through later on. Go a little more deeper and on your own. Mark 12, 41 through 44. What does it cost? Well, this is how Jesus put it. A woman, he sat and watched people giving their offerings, and all these rich people were putting all this money in there. Tons of money going into the offering. And then a little lady came in and she gave 2 little bitty half pennies. Barely anything. And Jesus went, whoa, that woman gave more than everyone else. And the disciples were confused. What do you mean? She gave a little bit. Those other people were giving thousands of dollars. She gave 2 cents. And he said she gave all that she had. It's all she had, 2 cents. But she willingly gave it all to God. Who got the blessing that day? She did. She did. In fact, she got such a blessing that we're still talking about her today, thousands of years later, right? Let me ask you something. What kind of blessing do you want from God in your giving? One that fills your bank account, or one that has people talking about your sacrificial giving generations from now? It's up to you. You get to decide. Then you can look at reasons for giving. Proverbs 3, 9 through 10. God's blessings depend on it. You want God's blessings in your life? Now keep in mind, again, I'm not talking about necessarily financial blessings here. When you have a generous heart toward God, blessings will flow. I consider myself to be one of the most blessed people I know. I have a wonderful family. I have everything I need. Do I have $1 million in the bank? No. Have I ever won the lottery? No. Probably ought to buy a ticket if I want to, but not going to do that anyway. But the idea is the blessings aren't always financial blessings. So if you're giving to receive financial blessings, again, you've missed it. And I wouldn't count on it. But the blessings of God in your life depend on your reasons for giving. Malachi 1, 8 through 9 is another place that shows you that your blessings depend on it. 2 Corinthians 9, 6 and 8. Again, talks about giving as you've received. And you get to decide. You get to decide about this. All I'm doing is giving you God's Word, laying it out there for you. You get to decide. And when you decide, you need to decide with a cheerful heart, a willing heart to do this. Because if you do it kind of, oh, well, that's what Pastor Bruce said we're supposed to do, or that's what God wants me to do. You know, if you got that kind of attitude, start over again. Go back through the verses and ask God to show you and help you. Also in Luke 10, 7, the second half, and in 1 Corinthians 9, 1 through 18, you're giving to support the work of the ministry. Literally to support the work of the pastors. Now, I'm bivocational, so I don't need your support, but Pastor Joe is full-time pastor here. And so we're to give to help support his work. That comes from the idea of when God set up the priests out of the tribes, the priests did not have any allotment of land or resources at all. They had nothing. They were giving nothing. Everyone was to bring into the temple, and the priests would receive from that so that they could live. The sacrifices, they sacrificed lambs and flour and stuff like that, and the priests got a portion of it so they'd have something to eat. And so that's where that concept comes from. So keep in mind that your giving is helping to support the work of the ministry. And in 2 Corinthians 8, 7, and 8 tells us that it's a natural response to love. You know, I mean, think of the love that God's poured out in your life. And so the natural response to that kind of love would be to give back. Because how many know that love is not a feeling or an emotion? It's an act, and it's an act of giving. John 3:16, for God so what? Loved the world that He what? Gave. Right. So a natural response to the love that God's given us would be giving back in that same thing. And then some other verses you might want to jot down. Psalm 37, 21, 37, 21, 25, and 26. And then here's some Proverbs 3, 9, and 10. 11, 24, and 25. 14, 21, and 31. 19, 17. 22, 9. And 31, 20. Now here's the most interesting of all the verses that talk about this idea of giving to God first. Malachi. How many of you know that it's not a good idea to test God? Even Jesus said that, right? When Satan tried to tempt him, he said, you shall not test the Lord your God, right? Okay, how many of you know that there is one place in the Bible where God says, test me, try me? It's in Malachi. You know what it's in reference to? Giving, tithing. Bring the tithe to the storehouse and see if I don't open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing so great you won't be able to handle it all. Go ahead, test me, God says. Anybody ever done that yet? This church has, over and over. I was thinking, I told Pastor Joe just this morning, I was thinking about when we first got into this building, and it was just big open warehouse space. And Pastor Joe gave us a message on church building. Now, I don't know about you, but every other message I've heard on church building required me to fill out a pledge card and get out my checkbook, right? Anybody remember that message? He talked to us about a widow who needed to pay a debt. And the prophet said, what do you have? I got a little jar of oil. Go get every container you can find in the city, and let's believe God. And so he told us to use what we have and let God do the work of pouring out of that. And that's what happened for this widow. So this is the only place where God says, test me, and I'd suggest that you do that. Please. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so that's the G, give. Any questions? Good, let's move on to S, save. Save, the next thing that we should do with our money. Genesis 43, 33 through 40. This is where I get the idea of 20% that God gave me. There was a great famine in the land, and Joseph was a slave, actually he was a prisoner at this time, and was called up before Pharaoh to interpret Pharaoh's dreams of a famine that was coming. And Pharaoh told him what the dreams meant based on God's word to him, and then he gave him a plan. He said, we got 7 years of good coming, followed by 7 years of severe. During the 7 years of plenty, take a fifth. How many know that's 20%? Take a fifth of the grain and store it away during those 7 years. And then at the end of the 7 years, when the 7 years of want come, we'll have plenty of grain to feed everybody. In fact, they had so much grain, God blessed that plan so much that all the neighboring nations were coming to Egypt to buy grain. So save. Put something away for the time you don't know that could be coming. How many know there could be some severe economic problems coming to this country? We're set up for it, aren't we? Why? Because nobody taught our kids how to do finances. This message isn't getting out. And so people are constantly spending more than they have and borrowing against what they don't have, including our nation and our leaders. And that's a disaster ready to happen. So, what should we as God's people be doing? One, sharing this message. Two, preparing. Preparing. How much? 20%, 1/5. Start putting it away. That's where I get the fifth. Proverbs 6, 7, and 8 talks about how the ants work. Even the ants know to work during the good time to put away for the winter. Even the ants know that. Okay? Proverbs 21:20 tells us that in the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours everything he has. See, that's the kind of guy I was. I can remember in the Marine Corps, I couldn't wait for payday because I was already broke. 3-4 days before payday, I was always broke because I spent everything I got in. I did that up until I learned this. As a young man, head of a household with kids, I was spending everything I made. A lot of times before I even made it. I got to clean that mess up because it wasn't God's way. So a foolish man devours all that he has. Proverbs 31, 18 through 25 talks about the Proverbs woman. It's a wonderful picture of a godly woman and a lot of good sound advice in there that can be applied to man and woman. And then John 6, 12. This is a story of Jesus feeding the thousands. When it was all done, what did the disciples do? They went around and did what? Gathered up all the leftovers, right? Nothing was wasted. I mean, if Jesus could take a couple of loaves of bread and a couple of fish and feed thousands, who cares if there's leftovers? Jesus cares. They gathered up all the leftovers. Nothing is wasted in God's economy. So that's saving. That's the next thing you should do. That's your S. Then what should we do? After we've saved, we've given God His 10th. We've put aside for the future. Now what do? Pay your bills. Yeah, pay your bills. Let's look at 2 Kings 4:7. This is my favorite. This is the story that Pastor Joe shared with us on the building program. You know, how many of you have bills and sometimes you look at your bills and it just doesn't seem like there's enough month for them? Have you ever trusted God to do something miraculous with those bills? You know what? It's biblical. This widow had debts that were left to her by her husband who'd passed away. And they were going to take her sons to pay off the debts. And she cried out to the man of God for help, for direction, for wisdom. And he said, "What do you have?" And she said, "I got a little jar of oil." He said, "Okay, let's take what you got and believe God." And she poured oil into every container she could find in the whole city until there was nothing left to pour oil into. She sold all that oil, paid off all her debt, and got her financial house in order. Now, was that a miracle? Pastor Joe's told us the last 2 weeks that God is not a respecter of person, that what He's done for others, He'll do for you. Can He do that for you? Can He? You don't sound very sure. He can do that for you. But conditions to promises. Get your financial house straightened out. Trust Him. Believe Him. Show Him that you're willing to do things His way. If you're going to just do that so that you can continue in your sinful spending and bad habits, God's not going to bless that. You got to get it straight. Show Him your heart's right on it. Put Him first. So that's paying our debt. Psalm 31:27. says the wicked borrow and never repay. I know a lot of people like that. They borrow, spend, and then they just declare bankruptcy and walk away from it. Sometimes it happens, unfortunately, and it's not a desire. But there are people that's their desire. That's how they intend to live, by letting others pay, or they don't have any intention of paying. Proverbs 6:1-5 talks about getting into debt and bad investments. Proverbs 22:7 and 26 and 27 talk about that the borrower, one who borrows, becomes a servant to the lender. Co-signing and guaranteeing other people's notes can be dangerous, especially if you can't pay. Proverbs 17:18 goes along that same line. Proverbs has a lot to teach about money in God's Word. And a lot of it has to do with not getting in over your head or helping someone else do the same. All right? Then you can look at Matthew 17:24. Talks about paying our taxes. How many like paying taxes? I do. I live in a country that provides great needs for me. I have clean water. I have so much clean water that I use it to go to the bathroom in. We laugh, but think about it. I saw a picture on Facebook of a little child from a third world country who went, let me get this straight. You got so much clean water, you go to the bathroom in it? That's sad. I live in a country where I have clean water. I have safety for the most part. I have police and fire. I have roads that I can travel on. I can do commerce freely. These are all things that I have because I pay taxes. Do I like paying as many taxes as I'm paying now? Not really. And the reason is they're not using it well, but that's my personal opinion. I should have stepped away from the pulpit when I said that. I'm sorry. It's my personal opinion. They're not using what they have well. Okay? But here's the thing, and I've told you, look at your dollar. If you got one. You got your dollar? Let me see your dollar. Wow. What does it say right there?
I don't know.
You don't know? What does that say?
The United States of America.
So whose dollar is that? Where'd that come from? Besides God. We know it's God's. But
United States of America.
yeah, it's got their name on it. If they want them all, give them back to them. If the government comes and says, everything that's got my name on it, give it back. Give it back to them. My promises for my future don't come from the United States of America. They come from my Father in heaven. And He will provide for my needs. So if they come and take it all away, take it. God's going to provide. Easy to say, hard to live out sometimes. But that's the truth of it. Matthew 18:25 talks to us about the cost of debt. There's a high cost of debt. And I'm not just talking financially. I'm talking about peace of mind and life and your quality of life and all these things. Just the frustration, the aggravation. In my house, before God taught me this, money was the number one thing that got my wife and I fired up at each other. Oh my goodness. I mean, just some of the strife that comes out of debt. God doesn't want that for His people. It's bondage. He doesn't want you in that. So He wants you to pay your debts. And then Romans 13:7 and 8 says, give to every man what you owe them, but owe them nothing but love. So that tells us we need to pay. So we give to God first, we put something in savings, we pay our bills, and then with what's left, we can spend. You got, let's say you get 10 bucks. You give God 1, you put 2 in savings, you pay your bills with 5, because how many know that budgeting is part of this? You got to learn how to budget. But most people budget off what they make. You need to learn to budget off after God and Uncle Sam and savings have got their part. So basically, you start with $1 or $10 like I did this morning. You start with $10. You give Uncle Sam his, what is it, 20% now, depending on where you're at? All right. All right, so you give God his 10 or his dollar first. You put $2 away in savings. You give Uncle Sam his 2 or 3, whatever he's requiring, and then you budget off the rest. Most people budget off the 10, and that's where they get in trouble. Now, here's the thing. I do that, and I pay my bills, and I do that and everything, and I've got, let's say I got $2 left over. What do I do with that $2? Spend it. It's yours. You earned it. Spend it. Go buy a candy bar. Go to the movie. Take your wife out for a date, or your husband, however you look at it. Do something, but honor God with it. Don't waste it or put it on things that would not honor God. Proverbs 3, 27 and 28 talks about helping other people, your neighbor, those in need. Proverbs 11, 24 and 25 talks about refreshing others so that you will be refreshed. And then Proverbs 31 again, that whole chapter talks about being industrious and spending wisely and using that money wisely. Isaiah 55:2 talks about wasting money on ungodly things. Why do you keep putting your money into a bag with holes in it? That's most of what the world's got to offer. But 2 Corinthians 12:15 is probably the best verse, I think, because it talks about spending everything you have for the spiritual needs of others. How many of you have someone that you love that needs to know Jesus? If you could put a price on it, how much would you be willing to spend to get them into the kingdom of God? Everything? Then do it. Do it. So that's basically it. GSPS, God's model for using money. Give, save, pay, spend. It's really not that hard. How's it work? I wish Andy and Angela had spent the night again last night and been here this morning. Last time I did this message, they were sitting right there. Andy is my second son, who learned this in my youth group back in Bonne Terre as a young man and has applied it, he and his wife, in their life for 7 years now they've been married. They don't have financial problems. They do not have financial problems. Just recently their water heater went out. They had money in savings to go buy a water heater. That rainy day came and they were prepared. I would let them give a testimony if they were here. How about a personal testimony? Before God gave this to me, my finances were just a mess. And I still am cleaning up debt from those days, even now. But we're getting there. God has been gracious and is blessing us. And we're getting there. But I still have to clean up the mess that I made. There's always consequences to sin. Okay? And so you have to work through those. But trust God. Believe that He's going to help you do that when you honor Him and put Him first in this. So personal testimony, my favorite one on tithing is, we were going to a little Baptist. I was the youth pastor. Tithing was an issue that to me was the church wants my money. Lisa was the faithful one. We need to tithe. So we got into one of those typical payday arguments. Okay, the bills are paid. I have $200 left. You want groceries or you want to give it to the church? What's the problem with that? Anybody tell me? Yeah, I had it in the wrong place, right? It shouldn't have been a question of do you want to give it to the church? It should have already been given to the church. But I had that problem. And so she says, well, I really think you should write a tithe check. So I wrote a check for $200 and threw it at her and said, there, fine. Now we have no groceries. I hope you're happy. Check my attitude? Yeah. Yeah, well, imagine living with that for a number of years. Now you know why she's a saint. Anyway, so she takes a check, and as soon as she takes a check from me, there's a knock at the door. And I go open the door with that, that attitude of, rah, 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 hi, how can I help you? Remember I was talking about last week? Yeah. And it's a guy named Paul Schreier. He's the wrestling coach at North County, St. Francis North County High School. I had been doing scorekeeping for all the matches over there during wrestling season because how many know wrestling's my favorite sport? Okay, well you do now. So I've been keeping score because I love wrestling. Oh, I didn't know, but they were paying me. He hands me a check for how much do you think? Well, actually it was $220. God always gives you a little abundance. You could have picked me up off the floor. Much to my wife's blessing, she did not say, see, I told you. She smiled and turned and walked away. From that point forward, I got it. I got it. Have I been faithful in it? I'm working at it. I am now, but at that time, it took me a while. But I began to believe God and trust God and put Him first in our finances. Did things immediately get better? No. I told you, I'm still working out of the consequences of my sin. But they're way better than they've ever been. And you know what? Paydays are never an issue anymore. It's never a matter of, is there going to be enough money to do what we need to do? It always is there. Always is there. Sometimes it's like the car breaks down. How are we going to take care of this? It's always there. I can't explain it to you. I just know it's true. Some of you know what I'm talking about. How about this one? How many of you know that my brother and I work together? We have a company that my dad started that we continued to run. When we took over for my dad, the company was in the red. It was operating in the red every month. We had a lot of debt. And not all bad, not all because my father wasn't a good businessman, but a couple of really bad business deals. Well, long story short, you can ask me about them later. But basically, a couple of big things happened that really set us back. And so we were operating in the red, and Jim and I had taken over, and of course Jim's my younger brother, and I made him president because I didn't want to be burdened with that responsibility. And besides, he was better equipped to do it. So after about, I don't know, 6 months, going on a year, he and I had met together one morning, and he said, you know, I know that you tithe personally, and you know I do. And I said, yeah. He said, but we don't tithe here at the company. What do you think? Should we? I said, yeah. Yeah, we probably should. He goes, here's the problem. We don't have enough money every month to even pay the bills. I said, well, if we start tithing, that's God's problem then, isn't it? So we began to tithe out of our deficit. In other words, here's the secretary of our company who my dad hired longer than Jim or I both. Jim walks in and hands her the stack of bills to pay, and the first thing to pay are ministries that we're going to start supporting through our work. And she looks at it and she goes, well, if I pay these, there won't be enough to pay the suppliers. Jim says, just pay them. So we began tithing out of our deficit. In 1 year's time, we went from a red to a black position. And we have been in the black ever since. Does that mean we're making a ton of money? No. But God is meeting our needs month after month after month. He does so. Why? Because He said, test me in this. Trust me. Put me first and see what I can do. That's what He's saying to you. All right, so how do you do it now? You know, you're already in the position. You have bills, you have your budget, everything. You're where you're at now. How do I do it? Just do it. I can't tell you anything other than that. Just trust God. Do I have to do a tenth? 10%? Only if you want to tithe. Okay? And I'm just telling you, it starts with the tithe. That's what God's Word says. You don't have to agree with me or like it. I'm just telling you, God's Word says, bring the tithe to the storehouse. Trust me. Test me. See what happens. So you just start doing it. But I don't have enough money to pay my bills as it is. You start trusting God, you can trust Him with that too. Wow. And then what about the savings thing? I can't give 10% to God and then put 20% in savings. Put something away. Start with something. And start trusting God with a little if you can't start with a tithe. But don't call it a tithe, because it's not. Tithe means 10%. Call it an offering. Begin. But the issue is your heart. The New Testament makes it real clear that every person should give as they have decided. Okay? You decide what you want to do with this information. The church does not hold you accountable to that, in that we keep dibs every week. Okay, so-and-so gave this much, and I don't think that's their tithe. We better have a talk with them. We don't do that here. Totally up to you. It's between you and God. Okay? All I can tell you is, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things that you're worrying about will be added unto you. That's His promise. That's His promise. So, you know, it's really pretty simple. Money, credit cards, checkbooks, savings accounts, T-bills, stocks, bonds, they're all tools. They're just tools. And God has given them to us to use for what? For what? For His glory. For His glory. To advance His kingdom, His plans, His will, not yours. So if this morning you find yourself in a place where you're kind of in a mess because of your circumstances, because you've not been taught this, now you know. Now you have to make some decisions about what you've learned. Sanctification in your finances comes by trusting God and doing what He says. Totally up to you. Let's pray. Father, I just commit each one of these people to you this morning. Their hearts belong to you. They'll give an account to you what they're doing with any of this. They don't have to tell Pastor Joe. They're going to give an account to you. My prayer is that you would build faith and trust in them. That what they have now, you would increase it to the place where they can begin to trust you with this part of their life too. Because this is the area that you've given us permission to test you. There are plenty of people who can share testimonies about how you're faithful in this area. The other thing we want to offer is just the willingness to help people. There are people in this church that are very good with finances. They have learned to trust you and how to budget things and use finances in a good way, and they're good at it. And there are people like me that are no good with finances, that really just have always done a bad job with those areas. But God, that's what family's about. You've given us each other to help and to come alongside and to encourage and teach each other. So my prayer this morning is that you would build faith in each one of these, and that you would help people to be willing to connect with each other. Those that are good at finances and understand your plan would be willing to say, I can help someone if they need it. And those that need help getting it together and putting together a budget and all would be willing to say, I need help. It's real simple. Pride has nothing to do with it. That just has to go out the window. And laying all that down and trusting you will accomplish much in your work here at Hope Church and in St. Genevieve. There are plenty of finances in this building this morning, right here, to meet all the needs that we have. Help us to use them to glorify you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.